Hello again. Just been asked a question by one of my regular subscribers about speakers. How to choose speakers and to put them onto a music system or a centre or whatever it is you're going to be using, be it hi-fi or whatever. Okay, a quick pause there. Speakers are such a wide subject. If you want to find out the easiest way and just find out what you need to know just to make sure it will work, go to the end where I'll have a very simple explanation. Otherwise, enjoy. And so this is it. This is just a very simple common sense guide, trying to keep it simple, how to choose speakers to go with your system. I'm going to cover Bluetooth speakers, passive speakers, the other sort of speakers, anything you can find that's there, power ratings and installations. Speakers are one of the few things that they've managed to successfully hoodwink us with. We do not know what we're doing when we buy them unless we are very, very careful. Speakers are a big subject, ranging from the IRS-5 from Paul McGowan's studio to this, which is about the size of an egg cup. And you never know when you're going to need them. You might have a computer, you might have a thing like this, or another thing like this, or this, and you think you're getting speakers with it, or you had speakers with it and they go wrong, or in the case of two of these, they don't come with speakers. They did once upon a time, but you're not going to get them because you're buying them used. Look at this beast. How would you choose where to start to get the speakers? We're not looking at Bluetooth or powered speakers. This is just for passive speakers. We'll do the other bits later on in the video. If we're on this Onkyo, first thing you do is look up the specifications, and if you can find them, you then go from there. Looking at the specifications, you can see it says here, power output 70 watts per channel into 8 ohms stereo, surround sound output 60 watts front, 60 watts centre, 20 watts rear. It says the frequency response is a respectable 20 Hz to 30 kHz. Total harmonic distortion is 0.08%, which means it's pretty damn good. Talking about frequency responses is where the human ear is quite important, because you can only hear certain sounds. It's all very good having an amplifier that goes up to 30 kHz, but your ears will only go up to 20 kHz. That's the same as CD, maximum frequency response, and it is widely regarded as the maximum height of frequency response for a human. Middle-aged people and people who are getting on a bit, they're lucky to get much over 10 kHz, but middle-aged is around 15 kHz. And when you're getting really old, you're looking at around 9 kHz as being the upper frequency response you're going to hear. I'm not an audiologist, but I've got those from a responsible source. Quite simply, for most of us, you don't have to worry about anything going over 20 kHz. Back to this thing then, let's have a look and see what else it can do. What we'll do is we'll use this as an example project. The starting point is power. It says 70 watts per channel into 8 ohms. That's the most important things we need to know. But it says 60 watts, 60 watts, 20 watts. And that's obviously, but it says 20 to 30 kilohertz, so that's okay. And we don't have to worry about that. Now 60, 60, 60, 20, 20 equals 180 plus 40. Now 220 watts, and we know that's to be true because we're going to look at something now. This is the type plate power rating thing on the back, and it says 250 watts, so we know that it can be no more than that. If the unit can only draw 250 watts, it means it can't supply more than 250 watts. So that means that the figures that we've been given on there are RMS figures. Just to make sure, I had a look at the circuit diagrams and stuff from the service manual, and you can see here it clearly states 70 watts per channel RMS, 8 ohms both channels driven, and that the continuous power is 60 watts for the front left and centre when it's in the surround mode. The reason these figures change is because as you put more load on the power supply, so it starts to sag, but that's another story, but that's the important numbers. Speakers are not always conventional. They're not always the cone and the box. Sometimes they're circular, sometimes they're rectangular, sometimes they're weird and wonderful shapes. Now what do you reckon on this one? This may not be conventional, but this is a computer system playing a MIDI file. What do you reckon? The sound is being generated by the magnetic pulses being sent to the motors and the whirring and the grinding of the motors, and it's not any real difference to any other speaker. We can enjoy this for a few more seconds. back to conventional speakers and how to choose them. We're going to have a look at some eBay listings and some Amazon listings and see where we go. We've touched on it already, but the first thing you're going to find a lot of is RMS, root mean square. This is a tone, like a whistle. It's up and down. When we measure it, it has peaks and troughs. And this is what music looks like, and that's why we use tones. We need something you can rely on, something you can actually equate, and that's this. If we flip them over so that they're all going in the same direction, you end up with something like this. The thing is with this is you can see there's gaps in between the sticky up bits, and those gaps are nothing, and that's exactly the problem. So that's what they do, they smooth it out and make it more like the bottom picture. And that's why we have a difference between peak to peak, RMS, and various other methods of measuring the power output or power input of speakers. The good news is, although they're all different, they are all common in one root, and that's RMS. For this Onkyo, we need 70 or 80 watt RMS speakers for the front and middle channels. Here are some very expensive speakers on Amazon. 80 watt, 8-inch high medium, £1,992. Here we have listings for some slightly cheaper speakers, still on Amazon. £660 for 2 times electro voice at 1,600 watts for a sound system. Then there's got the Wattage Evo 4.2 pair of speakers, bookshelf at £649, and the other ones there, same sort of price. The only difference being the colour. To take a closer look at the electro voice ones though. Let's have a look at this little beastie. See how we go. I'm not sure we're seeing exactly what's what here. So let's have a look. There's 15-inch woofer, 1.5-inch high-frequency titanium compression driver, 50 to 20 kilohertz frequency range, 95 dB SPL, sensitivity 134 dB, maximum SPL. It says 400 watts continuous, 1600 watts peak power handling. In the small print it goes just a slightly better detail. 50 Hz to 20 kHz, 95 dB and 134 SPL. But this is 400 watts and 1600 watts is the thing that's going to trick most people. The continuous watts are what you're interested in. You can see how difficult it is. Less money, more watts. What's the sense in that? That's because speaker design is an art as well as a science. This is a crossover frequency response for a very expensive set of speakers. Let's take a quick look at some budget speakers here. This pair of speakers is rated at 50 watts each, but 90 watts peak. They're only £109 a pair. How can that be? Well, it's the price they charge. And here they're next to some Wharftails at a similar price. And on here you can see the next trap, impedance. The impedance of the Newmans is 4 ohms and the Wharftails is 6 ohms. The other ones we were looking at were 8 ohms. Let me introduce you to the rule of thumb. This is where near enough is good enough, and if you get it sort of right, that'll be okay. But try and get it more right than wrong. Because speakers are such a weird science, I've tried here to give you as simple an explanation as possible. So here we go. Watts, impedance, volts, and load. The trouble is they all affect each other. And the reason for that is because amps times volts equals watts. What I'm going to give you here is a real-world example rather than an actuality. I feel it's more important you understand the concept rather than getting bogged down in real numbers. So imagine you have a 12-volt bulb and you put it in a 6-volt flashlight. It will be dim, but it will work. The batteries will last longer and the bulb will last forever. You put a 6-volt bulb in a 12-volt flashlight and it will fail in seconds and get hot whilst doing it. This is a way of thinking for speakers. If you put 4 ohm speakers on an 8 ohm output, they may overheat the amplifier and shorten the life of the equipment. This is where I hear some people saying, rubbish. It is true, and it's because the technology has changed over the years. What is true today may not have been true 20 years ago or 50 years ago. In the old days, where a valve amplifier, known as tubes in the USA, they used to use all different wattages and impedance of speakers, mostly high impedance in things like radios and record players. There were some funny goings on by today's standards. Then they introduced transformer outputs that allowed 16 and 8 ohm outputs. If, however, the speaker is disconnected on these sets, the output stage could self-destruct. Then came transistors. So on germanium transistor amplifiers, the load is part of the whole current flow. By using speakers of a lower impedance, the current will increase. And early transistors did not like this. They got damaged by the heat. They went into what's called thermal runaway. The later silicon transistors were much more robust. Proof that the technology is changing. Proof of this is that in the 1970s, a 20-watt amplifier was considered powerful. 50 watts and you were living the dream. In 2022, we now see 200 watts RMS as a relatively normal thing. The wisdom of old is not universal. You could not, on a vintage unit, use 4 ohm in place of 8. Today, most units are 4 ohm. You could possibly get away with 6 ohms on an 8 ohm vintage unit, but who is to say? Also, some speakers are noted as amp killers. Impedance is frequency dependent. Some speakers will go really low impedance at some frequencies. A hardy amp is required. Low power amps can destroy high power speakers. If the amp is run to the clipping level, in effect pure DC is being sent to the speakers. Clipping also causes high frequencies to be sent at high power to the tweeters. Clipping is that really awful noise that you get when you turn up a cheap transistor radio too far. PA and instrument speakers are not the same as hi-fi speakers. Never run hi-fi speakers with pure tones or instrument inputs at high levels. Tweeters on hi-fi run at a fraction of the power of the woofer, so to keep prices low, speaker manufacturers fit underrated tweeters to the units. Music and voice rarely have much power in the higher frequency range, but you get yourself an instrument and you pluck a high note, you're going to put that out and the speaker is going to go, wow, what the hell is that? And the tweeter's going to go. This is an example of a PA speaker or an instrument speaker. Not pretty, but works very well. There are lots and lots of listings similar to this, and I'm not making any comment other than to say, be careful. If you're starting to feel like this now, imagine what it's like on my side. Anyway, as a bit of light relief, let's see what these two guys can make of communication.
I'm crazy about baseball. Will you stand still? Pick up your hat. Go pick up your hat. Okay. Now look. Then you'll go and peddle your popcorn and don't interrupt the act anymore? Yes, sir. All right. But you know, strange it may seem, they give ball players nowadays very peculiar names.
Funny names?
Nicknames, pet names.
Not as funny as my name, Sebastian Dinwiddie.
Oh, yes.
Funnier than that?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Now, on the St. Louis team, we have who's on first, what's on second, I don't know's on third.
That's what I want to find out. I want you to tell me the names of the fellas on the St. Louis team.
I'm telling you, who's on first, what's on second, I don't know's on third.
You know the fellas' names?
Yes.
Well, then who's playing first?
Yes.
I mean the fellow's name on first base.
Who?
The fellow playing first base for St. Louis.
Who?
The guy on first base.
Who is on first?
Well, what are you asking me for?
I'm not asking you, I'm telling you, who is on first?
I'm asking you who's on first.
That's the man's name.
That's whose name?
Yes.
Well, go ahead and tell me.
Who?
The guy on first.
Who?
The first base.
Who is on first?
Have you got a first baseman on first?
Certainly.
Then who's playing first?
Absolutely.
When you pay off the first baseman every month, who gets the money?
Every dollar of it. Why not? The man's entitled to it.
Who is?
Yes.
So who gets it?
Why shouldn't he? Sometimes his wife comes down and collects it.
Whose wife?
Yes. After all, the man earns it.
Who does?
Absolutely.
Well, all I'm trying to find out is what's the guy's name on first base?
Oh, no. What is on second base?
I'm not asking you who's on second.
Who's on first?
That's what I'm trying to find out.
Well, don't change the players.
I'm not changing nobody.
Take it easy.
What's the guy's name on first base?
What's the guy's name on second base?
I'm not asking you who's on second.
Who's on first?
I don't know.
He's on third. We're not talking about him.
How did I get on third base?
You mentioned his name.
If I mention a third baseman's name, who did I say is playing third?
No, who's playing first?
Stay off of first, will you?
Well, what do you want me to do?
Now, what's the guy's name on third base?
What's on second?
I'm not asking you who's on second.
Who's on first?
I don't know.
He's on third.
There I go, back on third again.
Well, I can't change their names.
Will you please stay on third base, Mr. Broadhurst?
Now, what is it you want to know?
What is the fella's name on third base?
What is the fella's name on second base?
I'm not asking you who's on second.
Who's on first?
I don't know. Third base. You got an outfield?
Oh, sure.
St. Louis has got a good outfield?
Absolutely.
The left fielder's name?
Why?
I don't know. I just thought I'd ask you.
Well, I just thought I'd tell you.
Then tell me who's playing left field.
Who is playing first?
Stay out of the infield.
Don't mention their names out here.
I want to know what's the fella's name in left field.
What is on second?
I'm not asking you who's on second.
Who is on first?
I don't know. Third base.
Oh, take it easy. Take it easy, man.
There'll be links in the description to two of the versions of this sketch, and the long version is really worth watching. Right, wattage is not how loud it is. Wattage is watts. Without wattage it cannot be loud. Speaker efficiency is the measure of how loud it is. The maximum SPL, which is sound pressure level, is the maximum loudness it can be. Sound pressure level, see? Drive it past that point and all you're doing is making the speaker hotter than it needs to be, and you're pushing the cone further backwards and forwards until it's hitting the stops, which means it's going to destroy itself and it's going to distort the sound. Let's have a look at some eBay speakers and see if there's anything to be worried about. Sony speakers. Even reputable makers can be a bit vague with the way they mark them up. 30 watts nominal probably means 15 watts RMS. These Philips hi-fi speakers are almost certainly not hi-fi in modern terms, and different words mean different things to different people. These look like a good buy, but if you're going to buy something like this, you have to be careful that you don't get things with dried out cabinets and the foam falling apart, all that sort of thing. They can be a bit of a problem. They don't necessarily age well. And when you test old speakers on modern equipment, be very, very careful. It takes literally the blink of an eye to destroy a speaker. We shall cover that in the next section. How to test the speaker safely. By safely, I mean primarily the speaker's safety or the amplifier's safety. But sometimes it could be your own. It may not be the safest thing to do to destroy somebody's prize and joy speaker. You could connect this Sony to a 4 ohm speaker output, but not to a 16 ohm speaker output. If you think of the flashlight, if you connect a 4 ohm to an 8 ohm output, you may well destroy it. Think of it very much like the flashlight, but it's not volts. It is generally true to say you can fit a higher impedance onto a low impedance output, but not the other way around. The other thing that people get confused about is watts. If you connect a 10 watt speaker to a 100 watt amplifier, that's fine. The volume control on the front actually controls how much wattage is allowed to go to the speaker. So if you're running it quietly, it's doing exactly the same wattage, whether it be a 10 watt speaker or a 100 watt speaker or a 1000 watt speaker. But remember, you can turn it too far. Wrapping it up, let's have a look at this speaker. It's a Skytronic 10-inch big, and it's 250 watts into 8 ohms. And when you see here, it says 250 watts, but then it says RMS 125 watts, and the impedance is 8 ohms. Then when you look at the actual speaker, you can see they are so determined that you shouldn't get it wrong. I have respect for this brand because it clearly shows you the RMS and the peak without hiding or trying to mislead you. So now we're on to the warnings at the end, if you like, on this bit. 1. Never connect a lower impedance speaker than the amp specifies. It is not safe for the amplifier. 2. Never short the speaker terminals on an amplifier. Ensure any speaker leads cannot short at either end of the cable. It will destroy an old amplifier instantly, or if you're lucky it may blow just a fuse. I have seen lots of intact fuses and blown up transistors. Fuses are more for overdriving, not short circuit. What that actually means is that the fuse takes longer to blow than the transistor does. But when you're driving a speaker, it can actually be pulling current which the fuse will be quite happy to blow at. It's all to do with timing. Watts are essential as a limit to what a speaker can take. If a speaker is rated at 100 watts, it's a 100 watt speaker. If it's rated at 1 watt, it's a 1 watt speaker. So you can connect a 1 watt speaker to a 100 watt amplifier, and if you crank it up, the speaker will rattle, sound bad, then smoke, and then go quiet. And that will be the end of that speaker. However, if you just connect a 1 watt speaker to a 100 watt amplifier and you never turn it very loud, it will last for years. It is not the ability to drive, it's what you drive it with that counts. It's a bit like getting a moped and trying to run it 100 mile an hour down a hill. It's going to go bang. But if you run that moped gently along the bottom, doesn't matter what you do with it. So be careful. Do not overdrive your speakers and you will have a much better life out of them. And when you're testing speakers, make sure you don't overdrive them because they all fail in the end. As promised, we're going on to Bluetooth and powered speakers now. Let's have a quick look at what's available from Amazon. There are hundreds of them. They range from quite expensive, a couple of £100, right the way down to, well, £9.95 I think is the cheapest ones. All you've got to remember with them is that they are self-contained units. You just stick the signal in them and they will play it. If you don't like the sound of it when you buy it, it's never going to get any better. The good thing is that you'll just get the sound out that you expect, and it's never going to change. It's not going to be hi-fi if it's not hi-fi to start with, and the amplifiers, but you won't have all the other problems. What I will do later is a video on how to choose powered speakers and what to look for. But if you take the information from this one on what to look for in amplifiers, you've got a good idea of what to look for on speakers. Finally, and now we get to the nub of the matter. How to choose your speakers the safe way. I've tried to give you an outline of what's what on this, but it's a bit like you use nuclear power every day. You're not a nuclear physicist. You just plug your kettle in and hey presto, the electricity comes out the wall. Well, it's the same sort of thing with speakers really. This is how you choose your speakers the safe way. The correct impedance, look for the wattage. The impedance is to stop the amplifier being broken by the speaker, and the wattage is to stop the speaker being broken by the amplifier. So make sure they match, or you may have problems later. Look for the frequency range. 20 Hz to 20 kHz is the preferred for hi-fi. If you've got a higher range than that, that's fine. Anything less than 15k and you're going to be disappointed possibly, because it's going to sound a little bit flat, no real high frequencies in it. Look for a flat response on the graphs if there are any supplied with the speakers. The plus or minus dB figure should be as small as possible. Having followed those criteria, the most important thing about choosing a speaker is that you like the sound of them. If you don't like the sound of them, why buy them? So, if they sound bad to start with, they will not get any better. They might round off slightly, but basically, if you listen to them and think, God, that sounds awful, it's not going to get any better. But, if you listen to it and think, oh, that sounds nice, listen to it for a while. What tends to happen is you start to notice some of the other things. It's a bit like getting in a Rolls Royce. The loudest noise in a Rolls Royce is the clock. Well, not when you first get in there. It sounds very, very quiet. Then you've been driving around for a while and you think, why is that clock so damn loud? So, listen to them for a while, see if you're then happy with them, and then go from there. It's true, problems creep up on you with speakers, but if they sound nice to start with, you're in with a good chance. That's about the best I can do. Please, if you've got any queries, any answers, or whatever, for anything I've said, please put it in the comments. Communicate with me, it's a good idea. If you've subscribed, then great. If you haven't, then why not? And it wouldn't do you any harm. It is free. Don't forget, it just makes the channel easier for other people to find. Thank you very much, and I'll catch you another time. Cheers. Bye-bye.